You're here to learn about the power of rocks. This is leadership development time. My name is Charlie Ray. I'm an EOS implementer. Let's do this. The main objectives for today is going to be for you to be able to learn in order to develop your leadership and empower it ultimately so that you can have transformation for you and for your company. The agenda, how this is going to work, is I'm going to explain some context on what are rocks, why are they important, where do they come from, just give you some background. And then we're going to look at some applications, specifically how do you set and achieve rocks, and most of all, how are you actually using them within your company. And at the end, I'll give you some additional resources. So let's do this thing. Okay, so some context. What is a rock? When you hear the word rock, think 90-day business priority. So some sort of a priority that you're going to focus on for 90 days. The concept of rocks actually came from Stephen Covey. It was popularized by him in the rock analogy. And so if you want to take a look at this next slide here, this is what a rock is trying to answer this question is what do you work on first? And so imagine your life, imagine your 24-hour day is a glass jar. The glass cylinder is time. And usually what ends up happening is people actually put water in first, and that would be unimportant distractions. So a great example would be checking your phone first thing right when you wake up, checking all your emails, getting distracted, checking the news media channels. You're just they're unimportant stuff that you're immediately going reactive mode throughout your day. And then you have some sand, and sand are minor tasks, things that need to get done, but they're not super important. But it's that quick response, that quick conversation. Somebody's talking to you, right? You have pebbles that they are more important things that need to get done throughout your day. And ultimately, these are everyday roles and responsibilities, things that you should be doing. And then you have these rocks. The rocks are the most important thing of your day that you need to get done. And what ends up happening is most people put the water in first. They start their day off in reactive mode. They start with distractions. And next thing you know, they're filling up their jar with water, and then they got the sand, and then they're putting the pebbles in. And by 4 o'clock, new business development, you're supposed to make those phone calls. That's the most important thing for you to grow your company. They're not getting done, right? The rocks don't fit. Instead, Covey actually encouraged you to actually switch it and put the rocks in first, and then the pebbles, and then the sand, and then you can actually put the water in. Everything fits. So this is an important analogy. It's important to slow down because a rock is going to help you with prioritization. And so it's really not time management, it's energy management. It is priority management. You're managing your priorities and you're trying to say, what will I focus on first? Okay, if everything's important, nothing's important. And so it's really trying to get crystal clear on for today, what are the most important things I must get done? And when you take it from a 90-day perspective, it creates the 90-day world. So that's kind of where rocks came from. Another important context to remember is where do they show up in the EOS process? So in the EOS ecosystem, there's really three areas they show up. The first area is the vision component. And so when you think about the 6 key components to run a company, to organize your business, one of the components is the vision component. And within that, there's a VTO. It's a discipline or a tool. Within the VTO, it's going to help you get strategic with your vision. It's question number 7. So that's the first place. The second place is the traction component. And so the traction component is all about focus, discipline, execution. And it's actually the first tool or discipline that you use to get strong. And then the third place is actually within the level 10 meeting, which is part of the second discipline and tool of the traction component. We call it the meeting pulse. And so it's the third agenda item on that meeting. And so we'll just look at each of those real quick. So here's the EOS model, the vision component. If you could only get strong in 6 areas, 6 key components of your company, vision is one of those key components. And so when you look at how do you actually get strong on vision, where are you going and how are you going to get there? The key, the tool here to use or the discipline is the 8 questions. And so there are 8 questions on your vision. We call it the vision traction organizer. And so core values, core focus, you're looking at 10 years, 10-year target where you headed as a company, your marketing strategy. Ultimately, you're trying to bring it down to the 3-year picture, the 1-year plan, and then rocks, 90-day priority. So you're building and creating rocks in the context of the 1-year plan, and that's being built in the context in the looking ahead. Where does it fit in terms of the 3-year picture? And that's built in the context of the 10-year target. And so everything should be moving you one step closer to that core focus, to that 10-year target. And so you're kind of working backwards. And then the last question is the issues. What are your issues? So that's the first place that it shows up. This is the Vision Traction Organizer document. This is what it looks like. It just is a really organized, clean way to look at the VTO, those 8 questions. And so when you look here specifically at rocks, you're going to come up with a future date, 90 days out, the revenue, profit, and measurables, and then ultimately 3 to 7 priorities for these 90 days. And again, when you're doing this, it's 3 to 7 because less is more. And so we're saying 3 to 7, not 27. If everything's important, nothing's important, as I mentioned earlier. Another key here is that each person on the leadership team will actually have a company rock, and then they themselves will have a individual rock. And so their first individual rock will actually be the same as the leadership team rock, or you could say company rock. And so that's really important to distinguish here, is to make sure that everyone ultimately in the company is having a 90-day priority to focus on. The second place rocks show up is in traction. And so when you think about traction, it's just about focus, discipline, and execution. Vision without traction is hallucination. And so if you have a clear vision, it's compelling, it's clear, it's communicated with all. You want to be able to execute on that vision day after day, week after week, every single 90 days. Well, rocks is one of the tools and disciplines that you use to get this feeling of traction. And so the second place that it shows up again is in this 90-day world. You're creating a 90-day world for you and your entire leadership team and ultimately the entire company. And so this is what it looks like. Everybody's focused on the rocks for 90 days. They have a leadership team rock, 1 or 2, and then they have an individual rock. Again, 3 to 7 is kind of the rule of thumb. And every department ultimately is having rocks to focus on, and each individual within that department or that function of the company, they have rocks. And so everybody's focused on 3 to 7 major priorities, the most important things that must get done for the next 90 days. And so you guys are all working in the business for 90 days. Every 90 days, you come up for air, you look back on where you've been, you check where you're at to make sure you're still in line with the vision, because most of the time you're not, and then you set new priorities for the next 90 days and you jump back in to working in the business. So the 90-day world is a concept of every 90 days humans seem to lose focus. Businesses, leaders, we lose focus, so we need to refocus. We need to come back together, reprioritize, cast that vision, make sure it's still solid, and we're heading in the right direction. So it's almost like a course correction. And then you have the meeting pulse. This is the third area that the rocks show up. And so the meeting pulse, right now, if you were just to take your fingers and put it right on your physical pulse on your wrist, you could check to see if you're anxious, to see if you're, breathing heavy, if your heart rate, you're checking your pulse to see how healthy you are. It's a quick way to check what's the right pulse. How is my health? You're doing the same thing with your company, your business. Your organization has a pulse. It's beating at a certain rate. And so, what's the right meeting pulse for you and your leadership team, for you and the sales team, the operations team, right? The finance team, the marketing team? What are the right cadence or meeting pulse for you to be setting up? And so that's kind of the concept of the meeting pulse. And the level 10 meeting is really what we teach at EOS, and that's to have a level 10 meeting every single week. You start on time, you end on time. It's the same day, same time, and you follow a specific agenda. It's the same agenda. And so this is how a level 10 meeting looks. I've created another long video and article on this, so you can watch later if you want. But it starts off with a quick 5-minute, good news. personal and professional. Then you're going over the scorecard. 5 minutes, it's reporting. Is it done or not done? You're working your way down the scorecard. And then the third area it shows up is the rocks. This is where the rocks come in. Your rock review. So remember how you set priorities for the 90 days? Well, in your level 10 meeting, every single week, you're pulling that rock back up and you're saying, am I on track or off track? And this is what on track means. On track means 100% confidence. You feel very, very solid that you will get this rock completed at the end of the 90 days. You don't need a single person to help you. 100% confident. You're locked in, you're loaded. Off track means help. Okay, when you say off track, that means help. I need help. Something is off track. It's not headed in the right direction. And I'll touch on how to make decisions based on facts, not feelings, here in a second, because sometimes you may feel like you're on track, but the reality is you're off track. And so that's where, if anybody has a question, if they don't think you're on track, even though you feel like you are on track, they can say drop it down. Let's check about Billy Sue and her rock. Let's double check to make sure that it's good to go, because I don't haven't seen you work on it, and I don't really think that you're on track, even though you're saying week after week you're saying on track. So that's super important. Customer employee headlines. Is there anything internally that we need to be aware of with our employees or customers? It's a headline, almost like a headline on a newspaper. And then you do a to-do review. And so you're looking at your to-do list you created last week and trying to make sure you're getting 90% of your to-dos to done. And so this is all reporting. We're 25 minutes into this level 10 meeting. And ultimately, the language you're trying to use is drop it down, because what you're building is an issues list. So the entire level 10 meeting is focused on reporting and then building an issues list. You're extracting all the important issues to talk about. And then you're taking 60 minutes to talk about the most important issues at the root level, the foundational level, and you solve it one time for the greater good of the organization so that it goes away forever. And then you must end the meeting on time. So with 5 minutes to spare, you rate the meeting. You have a cascading message. Is there anything we need to communicate to our customers and to our employees? If so, who says it? How do we say it? When do we say it? To whom do we say it? And then you're also trying to get feedback, okay, on a 1 to 10 scale. How did we do today? 10 means we accomplished what we set out to do. A 10 means we started on time, we ended on time, we followed the specific agenda. It was the same day, same time. That's what a 10 is. Great effort, great energy, awesome, right? Is there anything that we can do to get better? You're trying to extract feedback and also do a to-do recap. You're looking at that to-do list and doing a to-do recap. And so that's really what the level 10 meeting is about. 5 minutes for connecting. You have 5 minutes for reporting. 60 minutes, 20 minutes for reporting. You're solving for 60 minutes, and then you're finishing by concluding for 5 minutes. So the level 10 meeting is amazing. The rocks show up there. So if you have rocks set and you don't have a good weekly accountability process, you're missing the second half of the puzzle, and that is to have really good weekly accountability where you're checking the rocks every week. How many times have you set a goal, a New Year's resolution, and then you don't really look at it until it becomes the next year and it's like December and you're like, oh yeah, did I do that? This is a way that you're baking in weekly accountability with your leadership team and ultimately within your entire department of whatever department's doing this. And so this is super important because rocks create focus. If you get nothing else from this video, why are rocks important? When you think about a rock, think focus. It's going to help you focus so you're creating greater alignment and accountability. And so you're trying to make sure the entire company is focused on the right thing. The analogy here is, imagine you're climbing a ladder and you're working so hard and you get to the top of the ladder and you realize you're leaning on the wrong wall. That's what we don't want. We want to make sure that you're focused on the right priorities. Another quick analogy here is the jungle analogy, again from Stephen Covey, efficiency versus effectiveness. And so you're efficient when you're in the jungle. You're cutting down You're trying to clear out a path in the jungle, and you're cutting down these trees, and you're slicing down these, these bamboo shoots, and you're clearing out the path, right? And everybody's very efficient. They're working hard, they're fast. You're actually taking some of the people, and you're teaching them how to have better form, so they're cutting down even sharper and quicker. And you're taking the machetes, and you're sharpening them. And so everybody, right, the managers down there managing, and they're managing them to be extremely efficient. The leader, the one leader, is going to climb the highest tree in the jungle, and he sees the bigger picture. He or she, they see the bigger picture. They look around, and what ends up happening is the leader realizes that they're doing these zigzags, and ultimately they're in the wrong jungle. So he shouts down to all the managers and the busy frontline workers, "Wrong jungle." And the manager and the frontline workers shout back up, "Shut up, we're making progress, right? We're too busy." And so that would be effective. Effective is you're in the right jungle and you're cutting a straight line. Efficiency is about um, doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things, and that's an important distinction there. So focus. Are you focused on the right things in your company? The key to execution is to be disciplined. Continue to come back and be disciplined to remain focused. So when you have focus and you're disciplined to continue to stay focused, get focused, stay focused, you have higher chances of improving your execution. That is how you do it. And the level 10 meeting is a way that the rocks get pulled in to that focus every single week. And so let's look at some application. How do you actually set rocks? Well, you do this during a quarterly. So a quarterly is a 8-hour session. It's a 7-hour session plus or minus an hour. So it could be 6 hours, could be 8 hours. You're doing this ideally with your leadership team and an EOS implementer to help bring that outside perspective. If you're with a sales department, you actually could do a quarterly as well, and it would probably be shorter, about 4 hours. But essentially, every 90 days, remember the 90-day world, you're coming together and you're casting vision for the next 90 days. Where do we need to go as a company? Or if it's for the sales department, where do we need to go as a sales department for the next 90 days? And you're casting vision. And so what you're trying to do is you're collaborating, creating 3 to 7 company rocks. And the exercise that we use is keep, kill, combine. It's mentioned in multiple books. I'd be happy to explain it to you. But basically, you're listing out all the possible priorities that you could focus on as a company in the next 90 days. And let's say you come up with 15 to 20. And then you're using this exercise, keep, kill, combine, to say what are the things we definitely need to keep? Do we need to kill any of these? And is there anything we need to combine? And eventually you're going to narrow it down to 3 to 7. So you're narrowing it down to what are the top 3 to 7 priorities for the next 90 days, which we call company rocks. Then you're taking the same approach and you're doing it with a individual rock. And so remember, if your number one rock is a company rock, then you have 6 additional individual rocks, up to 6 that you can set. So 3 to 7 is this rule of thumb because less is more. And so we're trying to do less better. And so if I have 2 company rocks, I probably don't want to have a bunch of individual rocks because that's going to take away from my focus for the company rock. So anytime that you have a company rock and an individual rock, if the individual rock, the company rock is one of your individual rocks, automatically gets put there. I hope I was making that clear. 3 to 7 total, right? 3 to 7 total rocks is what you're looking at. Some of them may be company rocks, some of them may be individual. All right, application number 2. When you're actually setting the rock, this is super important. You're not just going through and looking at it and saying, okay, that's the rock. You're trying to answer this question. Is it the right rock and is it smart? And you're using this two thumbs up approach. And so basically, is it the right rock? Meaning, hey, Bill, you're the visionary. I don't think you should be focused on that. No, I'm going to vote no. It's not the right rock. And maybe Sue is over here, and Sue, you're our finance, you're in the finance department, and you're setting a rock that's directly related to finance. And I think that's the right rock. Yes, that's a good rock. And so what you're doing is you're actually creating an environment where people can give open and honest feedback. And so if you walk out of this room, this quarterly session, and people aren't on the same page, that's an issue because now it's actually the leadership team's fault because you guys weren't in agreement that that was the right rock. Or maybe if you believe your integrator, the integrator is doing something that you don't think is in the best interest of the company. If you don't say something, then that's on you. And so ultimately, everybody's trying to agree. Yes, we believe that the 3 to 7 rocks that were laid out for this individual, that those are the right rocks. Those are the most effective things that they should be focused on for the next 90 days. And we believe that it's smart. This is where the 2 thumbs up. You got to get 2 thumbs up from everybody. So literally it works like this. Each individual is reading their 3 to 7 rocks that they will focus on for the next 90 days, verbatim, exactly written how it is. And every single person, they're checking and looking at each person. This is where a facilitator is helping to make sure it's the right rock and that it's smart, meaning specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's relevant, time bound. Specific is 90 days. Measurable, specific is also being, you can be more specific with your language, right? So let me give you an example here. I want to be a good husband. Let's say that's my rock. I want to be a good husband. Well, what does that mean? Why don't you describe what good is with specific behaviors? So I want to be a good husband by taking my wife on a date 2 times per month and writing her a love note 2 times per week. Okay, and buying her flowers 1 time per week or something like that. Okay, those are 3 specific things. I could measure if I'm doing that, right? And so that's a way to make it specific. Be specific, describe the behavior, describe, make it measurable. How are you tracking and measuring this? Is it attainable? Is it actually realistic? Are you shooting way over the moon? It's no way you're going to get this done. And then is it relevant? Meaning, is it the right rock? Is it the most effective thing? Is that the best use of your time? And then time bound again is 90 days. So right rock, got to get a 2 thumbs up from everybody. And so what this does is it actually empowers your leadership team to make better decisions. You guys are all in agreement. This is the right rock for our visionary, and it's the smart rock. And pro tip here, visionaries probably shouldn't be having rocks. They can have a rock, but just don't announce it to the company, right? You just make it a personal rock that you don't really tell anybody because visionaries typically now they have a hard time with focus and discipline and execution. So sometimes it's difficult to actually try and drive that accountability with a visionary. They feel locked into this 90-day world thinking, but everybody else got to have a rock. I mean, that's going to help you guys so much. So when you report on the rock during the level 10 meeting, you're really saying 2 things: on track, off track, and there's really a third thing. If it gets done, then you're saying complete. And even if the rock is complete, you still bring it up psychologically. It helps, and you're announcing to everybody, hey, this was my rock and it's complete. And so basically those are the 3 ways you're saying it. Now this is really important because creating the right rock and the smart rock and bringing it up every single week on your level 10 meeting, it creates and sustains culture of focus, self accountability, and ownership. That would be an amazing culture if you had everybody's focused, they're self accountable, and they're taking responsibility. So what I wanted to show you next was a quick rock setting tip. And so here we are on this concept of, here we go. Okay, milestone. So what is a milestone? A milestone is just a way to help you stay on track, off track. So remember earlier I was talking about when you have a feeling that you're on track, but you don't know. How do you know you're on track? If you have a milestone, there's a way to actually know. You can accurately monitor. So a milestone is just an effective way to track progress. Okay, so here's an example. Something is due in 90 days, so you create 2 or 3 milestones to help you. So milestone 1 might be in 30 days, what would success look like? In 60 days would be milestone 2. And so I got this analogy and quick pro tip from another EOS implementer, Randy McDougall. Appreciate you, Randy. Super awesome. To understand milestones, let's go back to the 90-day world. So typically, let's say this is your quarterly, and down here, this over here at A, and B is your next quarterly. So this is 90 days later. Typically, what happens, your rocks are set, and this is when the rocks are due. Nothing happens. Okay, so there's no activity, and what ends up happening is you're procrastinating. So we call this a procrastination curve, and it gets closer and closer. A couple weeks out, you're like, oh snap, our rocks are going to be due. Our EOS implementer is going to be asking us, hey, how did you do on your rocks? And I'm going to let my leadership team down. So a flurry of activity happens, and you're rushing to get it done, right? So how do you actually make this activity happen faster? Well, shorten the interval from week to week, and this is where your weekly level 10 meeting comes in. Is you're actually trying to shorten when things are due. The ultimate goal would be to have it where you're actually having a utopia. You're coming out the 90-day world and you're just like on fire with your activity. So Randy McDougall taught me this concept of the execution curve using milestones. And so what it is actually setting, you're going to come out of those 90 days having great activity, and you're actually going to use a milestone to track it. And so this is going to help you with execution. So you're 30 days into it, and you can say, is your milestone one done or not done? If it's not done, you're definitely off track. And so it's a way to objectively say, making decisions off of facts, not feelings. I am on track because I'm on track with my milestone, or I'm on track with my milestone two, or I'm off track. So that's just a quick pro tip there. So one other thing to think about with the application is these are just some helpful questions. What is mission critical for these priorities? Mission critical. Everything cannot be important. What must get done in the next 90 days? What does done look like? Describe it, define it. What would absolutely aggravate you and just make you angry if it wasn't done? And think about it. When somebody comes to you with a rock and they're not done, what would just make you so mad if this wasn't done? What would make you feel excited and just ecstatic, so happy if this was done? Describe what the finished product or a result. What is the result you're looking for in 90 days? What does done look like? Get really, really clear and specific, right? What would just annoy you if it wasn't done? If you didn't get this done, I would be very annoyed, okay? And you're asking the leadership team. So that's describing what done looks like. In light of the 1 year, what are the most important things to get done the next 90 days? And remember, the 1 year is set in light of the 3 year, and the 3 year is set in light of the 10 year. And here's another one. For the greater good of the company, what are the key issues that we must get solved this quarter? Okay, for the greater good. So that's some quick application. Where do rocks show up for your direct reports? Ultimately, guys, your rocks are showing up at the leadership team level and then at the individual leadership team member level. Within each major function of a company, the finance, operations, marketing, sales, whatever those major functions are, each of those departments or functions, they should have rocks focused on that function, and then individual rocks for each individual. And so you're really trying to go as far down as possible down the accountability chart, so that when you do an EOS rollout, every department should have rocks and every leader should have a rock. And the way it shows up is on the level 10 meetings and also in the quarterly conversation. So every 90 days, whoever is your direct report, you're meeting with them every 90 days, getting off-site, so one-on-one conversation, and you're asking a couple questions like this. What's working? What's not working? What help, support, or assistance do you need? And specifically, expectations, communication around the 5 company core values, the 5 rocks, and the 5 roles of their seat. And so we use 5 in quotations because there may not be exactly 5 company core values, but generally there's going to be around 5. And so that's the 555 tool. But this discipline or this quarterly conversation is taught in more depth in the book, How to Be a Great Boss. So I'd definitely encourage you to look at that. So anyways, one clarification here is the compartmentalization tool is a way to differentiate what are rocks as opposed to goals. A goal is a 1 year priority, and there's 3 to 7, less is more. A rock is a quarterly priority, 90 days. A to-do is a 7-day action item. And so a to-do means it's something you're going to focus on. It's a priority for the next 7 days. And then issues are everything else. You have long-term, which are greater than 90 days, and short-term. These are ideas, problems, opportunities, right? And so that's just a really important clarification, the compartmentalization tool. All right, helpful resource. If you are not using a software to track the rocks, once you've set rocks, you must track them to make sure they're on track, off track, and to drive that accountability. I would encourage you to check out 90.io. If you go to this web link here, or you can just scan this QR code, you can get a free 30-day trial. If you're already using it, definitely encourage your leadership team or whoever is over you to help you with that, to figure out how to use it correctly, right, with the rock. So it's an incredible, powerful tool to better run and streamline and simplify how to run on EOS. So guys, I really appreciate your time today. I know it was a little bit longer video, but this was the power of rocks, leadership development time. May God bless you. Your call to action is go set your rocks and then execute on them. If you need help, reach out to me. There's my phone number. There's my email. May God bless you. Have a great day. Talk to you later.